Hello YouTube, I have a little story for you today. A story that I've been teasing on the channel for the past year. And that is going to be the instant where I broke my ribs squatting. And you might think that I already gave it away, but there's a twist. Because you're going to understand the reason why my ribs broke, and it might surprise you, and it might even save you a similar injury in the future. So that story to me started like any other regular injury I used to have back when I didn't know what I was doing, where I would get elbow pain, I would get lower back pain sometimes, especially the SI joint, and I would just train on it because I didn't understand how to navigate around it. I had no injury prevention practice, and therefore, when my ribs started to hurt at the beginning of spring, I just trained on it because I didn't know any better. And I trained and I trained. And unlike my other injuries that would come and go, this one actually was getting worse. Worse and worse and worse. And it started as just a tiny little prick in the ribs, and it got severe to the point where I couldn't really get up anymore because it would really just, it was a tearing pain in the rib. And I think it started on the left side, and it was concentrated on the left side, and it eventually spread. So both sides were in constant pain nonstop. And it was especially bad when I squatted and deadlifted. And the main culprit was front squat. Front squat was torture. That front position, just doing it, I feel it stretching my ribs. Now I'm fine. Back in the days, it was awful. And you know that front squat is a lift that if you don't practice, you regress. So it was an endless situation of me front squatting, being in pain, getting injured, and still going because I didn't want to regress. And I kept at it like a good idiot, and I kept pushing, pushing, and pushing, not listening to my body, which was telling me, hey, it's time to stop, you're going to get hurt. And eventually, one day, I loaded what I believe was 385 on the bar for a back squat, and I was supposed to go for 7 reps. And I unrack the bar, I get out, I go down, 1 rep, I get up, slight pain, think, okay, I can power through this. I go down again, 2nd rep, at the bottom, when I reversed, I heard a snap. One of the scariest sounds I've ever heard in my life. And I didn't feel any pain. I just shot up, the adrenaline made it so that the rep was super easy. I shot up, and when I locked at the top, paralyzed in pain, I couldn't move. I barely re-racked the bar, I got out, both my ribs were spasming in pain. It was impossible to bend over, I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. And at that very moment, I didn't know it yet, but at that very moment, I had broken my ribs and I had sprained the entire costal muscle, which is the muscles in between the ribs, which by the way is one of the area of the body with the most nerve endings, which means that it's extremely painful. So that happened, I got a battery of tests done, and lo and behold, my ribs were broken. And so I couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't understand why. Because, yes, I trained on it like an idiot, but I didn't get why they were in pain in the first place. I didn't understand it. And I remember after that still training on it because, you know, when you're dumb, you're dumb. So I would keep training, it would keep getting bad. And I remember at some point, it was in May, just walking around the city, I could barely walk. I was crippled. I had to walk very slowly. If I had to sneeze, and you'll see that the sneezing portion is important, I was cringing because I knew that when the sneeze was coming, I was going to be dying in pain because the sneeze, of course, contracts the thoracic cage, and therefore it also contracts the ribs. So it was hell. And guess what? I'm allergic to pollen. So I was sneezing all the time. And it got to a point where I couldn't even stand up, meaning that sitting was terrible, getting up was not possible. I had to rock back and forth, I had to mentally prepare myself. It wasn't healthy. And the worst part was that it had gotten to the point where I was so mentally scared of the pain that just the action of bending my knee would trigger the pain. Because my brain had associated the pain of the rib injury to squats and knee flexions because I got hurt doing squats. And so I was basically traumatized. And it was my own fault, of course. And so what ended up happening after this is I said, okay, I'm going to take 3 months out of everything to let the ribs mend, and I'm going to do something else. So I did a lot of upper back work, and I invented a stretch for the ribs that actually I think really helped with them, which is in the injury prevention playlist. I still do it to this day, and you'll see why. and I let the ribs mend. And I remember after 2 months, after a month, I started to reintroduce upper back work with just machines, nothing loaded. After 2 months, I started doing rows with dumbbells, and after 3 months, I started doing deadlifts again with 2 plates. And it's what I stuck to that, and I rebuilt from that. And the pain actually went away. It took a long time to unlearn the mental link that I had made between squats and the pain, but I eventually got better and I could front squat and everything. And so I think by the time the winter rolled around, so I got injured in spring, by the time winter was there, the pain was gone and I was starting to gain strength again. But then, for some reason, spring came back and the pain came back. And the pain was just the same, it was the same feeling, and I could feel I'm going to get injured again. What is going on? And so I just took a step back. I didn't understand what was causing the pain because I didn't do anything different. The ribs were just hurting. So I took a step back. I was like, okay, I'm going to sandbag. For the entirety of spring, I'm going to sandbag because last time I got snapped. I don't want them to break again. So I took a step back and I waited. And when summer rolled around, I was fine. So I could train heavy again and I started again. And all throughout that, my ribs were always sensitive. I always had to be extremely careful still to this day. It's better now, but I continue to do the stretch I have to send blood in the area, and I continue to reinforce proper posture and proper connection to the pain and the interaction I have with it. Because if I don't, I'm going to regress and be in pain again. But now we get to the interesting part, because I start training heavy again, winter, and then spring again. And guess what? The pain comes back. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I have done my rehab. I know they're mended. The intercostal muscle is now completely healed. It's solidified. I fixed my trauma. So what is going on? Why is the pain coming back? There must be a stimulus that is making the pain come back. And then I realized it was my allergy to pollen. Sneezing was making my ribs crack because I was sneezing so often that it was small spasm, 15 times a day, which was re-aggravating the rib. And then I would train on it and it would be bad. It would hurt. And I was like, oh my God, it's the way I sneezed. Because I used to sneeze like a maniac, like a barbarian, like most people, like, rah! And I had to relearn how to sneeze. It got to that point where now I sneeze and I just do, I just let all of the air out of my lungs. The thing you do not want to do is this. Do not pinch your nose and sneeze like this because you can blow an eardrum. So be very careful. But I had to relearn how to sneeze to not let all of the energy be focused on the ribs and just let it out. And it actually worked. Another thing I did, I might make a video next spring, is I started microdosing bee pollen. Even though I'm allergic, be very careful when you do that, because it reduced the symptoms and I didn't even sneeze anymore after like 2 or 3 weeks. But I'll make a tutorial about that. And so this is how I broke my ribs. I fragilized them so much that when I loaded heavy weight and I got down in the hole, they snapped. And after that, the cycle of pain was never ending because ribs take a long time to heal because you're always moving. And it's such a poignant pain that you're going to remember it for the rest of your life. And therefore, it's really hard to rehab because you're constantly in fear. But I did it. And at this point, I'm at the strongest I've ever been. I do my lower body lifts all of the time. I get no pain. But I continue to do all of my rehab every single lower body day. I do stuff for the ribs because I'm not playing. And next spring, when I'm going to start sneezing again, you better believe I'm going to start taking pollen and I'm going to be very careful with the way I sneeze. So that's the story of how I broke my ribs squatting. It was my worst injury ever, and I hope it never happens to you. And with the information I gave you today and the information you have in the injury prevention playlist, you should be fine. You should be bulletproof for the rest of your life. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.